I'm Nader Hanisupov, and this is an episode of Leaders and Engineers. We are broadcasting from Sweden today. Today, our guest is an expert in printed board assembly, Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, with about 35 years of experience in mechanics, quality, and printed board assembly. He worked in such companies as ABB, Stal, Refrigeration, and Helmer. And he leads a subcommittee in IPC Standard Forum, focusing on the press fit rework activities. And he is also an author of professional articles related to the printed board assembly. He is living in Sweden and working in Ericsson as a senior printed board assembly manufacturing and reliability specialist. Please meet Lars Bruno.
Nice to be here.
I think in Sweden it's pronounced like Lars, right?
Lars. Wait. It's a bit strange sound. If you put it very slowly, Lars. Yeah, it's a little strange R sound, and then it's.
But it's not.
I think it's okay. It's okay.
But it's not like Lars.
No, they don't say Lars or Lars. No, they don't in Sweden. But I know in France they say Lars. In America, Lars. They are trying to put in their way of talking weekends. But I think it's a little typical German or Nordic name.
Speaking about France.
Yes.
I heard you commuting quite often between France and Sweden. Is it that you live there or you actually live in Sweden? Because I said you're living in Sweden.
Yeah, that is half true. It's true. But see, the last 20 years I've been going back and forward between Sweden and France because my wife and my daughter lives in France. They are French.
Oh.
And so I have a very small apartment close to work here. So I can walk to work in Sweden. And then we have a little house in the suburb of Paris. So I work normally every second week in France and every second week here. So I go back and forward all the time.
Is it more duty for you or you enjoy this kind of lifestyle?
Sometimes, often, I can tell you it's more maybe problem, more work than it's. I try to enjoy. When I'm here, I meet my Swedish friends and do my old friends and play my music with my friends and I don't think now I'm away from my daughter and my wife. I'm not. It's no idea to be sad. And when I'm in France, I'm happy with my family, and so I try to take advantage of both. And sometimes I can say it could be quite good if my wife tell me to clean or do many things. I say okay, I do it because next week I can take it easy. It's a bit. It could sometimes be good, and sometimes when it's winter and cold in Sweden, and I come to Paris and it's spring and flowers like it is now in France, and also it's much more culture and history in France than in Sweden. We have more like big forests here, so it's nice to take like a weekend to a castle and have a nice dinner and so on. I try to take advantage of both places.
Well, this is really great to hear. And I would like to, of course, we can touch this about France more, and I would be more interested to compare the working environments. But before we go to that question, I would like to propose you that we try to imagine a bit different setup that, let's say you're applying for a company. And it's imaginary company, imaginary position, but I would propose that right now we try this kind of job interview mode so that people will get to know you, but also see the flow of the tactical job interview. And but this is engineering company, and position is leadership in the engineering company. And then after some time, I will say the job interview is over, and I will ask your feedback. How did you feel? Was it similar to your previous experiences? So are you ready?
Okay, I can be ready.
I know it's a bit different, but
I haven't applied for a job for 30 years. But I just follow. Maybe I shall tell when you ask me, but it's I changed Ericsson in Norrköping, Ericsson Katrineholm, and I'm here not because I searched, but because things have happened, and I just follow them. But it's okay. Yeah, we go ahead.
Yep. So you're ready?
Yes.
All right. So, hello, Lars.
Hello.
Thank you for applying for a position in our company.
Yes. Sure. I would really like that possibility. Okay.
And I'm really happy to see you here. And this position is the leadership position in the engineering department. And our department is focusing on the printed board assembly. And the product that we're producing in our company, it's a holder for the baguette, French baguette. So you can conveniently carry it with you wherever you want, but it also looks stylish. And you will see this on your screens. I will show to Lars how it looks like. So basically, this is the baguette holder.
Yeah, it's a real improvement because in France they're quite sometimes not so hygienic. They take in their hands, and when they go out of this, when they bought it, they often take it by the other hand and start to eat and handle it. So that is a good protection, I think. That could be
exactly, and the question only would be probably where there is this printed board assembly.
Yeah, that's what I'm not so sure. I don't. You keep often nowadays you have, of course, sensors for temperature and moisture and so on, and some kind of electronics to maybe to take care of the information, and maybe you can have some copper heating somehow. I don't know. Nowadays, often where you don't maybe expect electronics, they are there in textiles and something. If you need to measure something or adjust some temperature or something, you need some small electronic anyways. And in this case, you probably need some flexible substrates or that can bend or
I see you have already many interesting ideas, and that's exactly what we need. Very motivated person who will propose us how to develop further the product. And but my actually question, you apply for this position, and I actually want to ask you, why have you decided to apply for this position?
No, I think I worked for 30 years in one company, and I got my role quite, and I think in one way I continue and do the same things, but over the years I got quite a lot of experience, and I think it could be maybe my last chance with my age to do maybe give this experience and knowledge to a young or maybe start up for a smaller company, and maybe it could also be faster decisions. In those big companies that I work now, it takes some time before we can make a decision and so on. So it could be interesting to work in another environment and be part when they start up a production.
Is it so you just mentioned that it's quite often in big companies, lots of bureaucracy, and takes much more time for decision making. Did you wish it was different in big companies, and how would you have improved that?
I think sometimes now I learned quite a lot how to who to ask and how to write and how to, for different groups, how I should explain what I need to get approval to do tests that I would like to do. So but sometimes it's not really clear who I should talk to and so on. And and it's sometimes they need in this big company a quite formal way to if you would like to have resources. And I really understand that is very much a need, and that's a partly a good thing, but sometimes my wishes does not really fit perfectly into this way that we work here. So, but now, because I worked nearly 30 years in this company, I learned ways how to do.
So you always get what you want.
Yeah, and if I don't get what I want, it's probably that I don't have sufficient good arguments, actually. Sometimes I'm a little enthusiastic, and I work quite close to the production with many people that have really good and many ideas how to solve problems. But often, actually, it's a good thing to formulate, and really, when you need to convince someone else to get resources, to really think twice before you start to act. Because sometimes over the years we have, of course, thought we had great ideas, and then we started to work, and after a while we found out it was not so good ideas. So then we have learned something. But if you can already from the beginning make a good plan and time estimation, and often in the end you gain. And maybe if you also do some kind of risk analysis, it's you're prepared, better prepared. So I think in many cases those formal ways, you feel when you apply for resources, this now I have to do this work that takes a week of my time. Well, it takes time before we can start with the real test. But often, actually, I've learned over the years that this preparation work often makes the real tests much better, actually. So it's good it's many cases, even if I sometimes takes time, and it's for me, and it's takes time to start the work. Often it's quite many advantages too. So it's
But you also mentioned that you've been working so long and you know your ways. But what do you think? Does it come always to more to knowing the right people to get through, or actually it's about the strong argumentation? Could it be that you don't have strong arguments, but you just know right people and you get things done?
Sometimes I can say if I know some managers or people that have resources in different groups, and they have confidence in me, I can say, can I do this work? It's a bit hairy. I need 10,000 euros now. And in some cases, I get this because I know, and they have confidence in me. But then they can lose confidence quite fast if I make mistakes. So
so basically there is some credit of trust which you are putting forward, and you don't need to provide then proof or kind of argumentation.
It depends on, but it's in some. If I go to some organizations, then I really need to say, to get the resources here, you need this formal way of working, and you have to present on different meetings. Even though I have all the information, I say, can I put it into one meeting. You know, I say first we have a certain meeting, and then we decide that you should take the next step, and then you can present the next step. So and actually, even those I know some fast ways, they just to be sure, I really would like a dialogue with them as well, as to, so I'm more secure or more safe, actually.
So it's like it's not just purely your decision, but it's more like team decision.
Yeah, and I like to work in the team. I can say from the beginning that I actually, when I started to work after school, I worked in the workshop for new employees that I would work with a metal workshop by hands, actually work with the machines. And I try to go actually every day. I'm out in the production, and I have great respect for those who work in, and I try to listen and discuss with everyone, and and also lift up the people who comes up with ideas. So maybe if someone do a good job, then I write in the report, and when I present, I tell this. Listen, I know they wouldn't listen to me if I say from now on we should be polite. But I started actually when someone gave me something, I said just thank you. And then I noticed how that's actually spread. So I did something like, I tried to make some small changes, even though I was a beginner and I was a journalist and no one really listened to me. But I noticed I could make some changes if I had some good plan how to do.
So I can see you already not developing only and working on technology, but also changing culture, sending these ripples in the cultural change. But I would like also to ask about your experience with the articles you published in the professional magazines, journals.
Yes.
And you had experience with conducting joint research with EMS, this electronic manufacturing service. I think it was Flextronics. And in such topics like the automated X-ray, hole detection, use head-on pillow defects. How was that experience?
Yeah, well, I have several different projects, and actually for nearly about 25 years time, I've been the Ericsson coordinator for Universal Area Consortium. And there are 35 different other companies, and we have to cooperate and discuss and together propose new projects. I can convince the management of the consortium. And I also was a manager for the HTPAG, another consortium where all the member companies have to do the work. And I was manager for one project, and it was, it's not easy to, and in the beginning, I was actually not convinced that I should, if I tell, could you at Nokia do this, and you, and another company, Bosch, you can do this and that, and those experts should really do what I tell them. But actually, this teamwork has worked very well, and it's actually we got the first prize in this conference exhibition for a certain one of the work, and
that's impressive.
Yeah, so this was and it's not easy, and there were some subcontractors that we need to use that said we have to do it in this way, otherwise I drop off. And then we have discussions, how could he talk about us in that way? But that was a really expert in that area, so that was a good reason to listen to him, of course. But we thought in the group we had a special meeting without him actually. That in this case we have to we have to follow him or leave, otherwise we'll get in trouble the whole project. And say the Flex, really some really good engineers in Silicon Valley, their development plant they have at Flex, and we had a really good cooperation, and quite many of the in the end what they did when they took care of all data and made some statistical calculations and so on was really what we needed actually. And that was more than I asked, because I was a little I thought I should be kind by not asking too much of every company, but some of them actually not surprised me, but I asked for a small thing and they came back with really super good work. So it was it's not easy, but I think
But if we go back to what you mentioned about that case when one was against, and basically the solution you found here was to give in to that person's demand.
Yeah, it was a bit, because we said you can do this and you have this price, and then we say good, now we know that, now we should ask a few other companies. And then he told us, I already told you too much that I didn't want to say, and I don't want, if I was sure that I should get this job, and if you even think about asking someone else, you can't count on me, then I leave the project. So that was a little price in that project, I can say. That were,
but did it change the scope and the goal of the project?
No, it didn't. And we know that he could do a good job, and maybe no one else could do this kind of job as well as he could do. But I'm a little surprised the way he formulate himself and make like a fight when you don't need. I have had other person that I thought we should I do this part and you do the other part, and then we should have a meeting. And the first thing this lady told me, if I don't have this part, I quit, I leave you, and you cannot make this a good project. And then I told her this was just what I was about to suggest to you. So I learned that some it's they don't wait actually. There are many different personalities, and
but in this case, what they propose, you fully agreed, or you actually said that we agree with you 50%, but 50% will be our way.
In that case, actually, we gave a certain work, and this work, you do this work, and you report it in this and that way. And in that aspect, he didn't have much to choose, actually. And but then he said, I must do all this, and for this price, and the way we have discussed, because we have discussed together, and we had to accept that sometimes you can get in that situation. But maybe it was also maybe a little misunderstanding in the beginning when we had the discussion with him. And maybe he told us more than he wanted to tell us, because he was so sure to get this job. So it's easy maybe for me to say that was not so good behavior from his side, but maybe we should have been more clear in the beginning what we wanted from him and what this discussion was all about. It's
but when it comes to cooperation with, as you mentioned, Universal Air Consortium with different companies, this is one set of challenges. But how about publishing? If you develop something new, some new technology, what are those challenges when you do this research for a company? What are the challenges with making it available to the public?
Yeah, it's really in those consortia, I know it's consortia that we work with. It's the first thing you should think about is we would like to have a certain development on a certain increased knowledge, and maybe we have a problem with one of our prototypes or something at Ericsson it doesn't work well. Then how should we present this in a cooperation, in a consortium, so we get the result we want, but we don't want to tell the other companies which product it is and really exact how our product looks like, and maybe not even that we have a problem. And so that is the first thing the best thing when you work in this consortia, that what you mention and what we discuss in those forums, that it should be, or fora, that should be no secrets. Like, we keep the secrets outside from this. So you really need to think about that before you go to a meeting or in this international group, because they are really international, Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese, American, Europe. So if I tell a secret, that will be spread all over the world immediately. So that's really important to be clear before this. We take this test vehicle, we design it in a certain way, and we present the test or the project in a certain way, and a few things we don't mention at all, and we make this very clear in the very beginning. Then you feel secure when you're in those international fora.
All right.
So it's
Well, I would say similar question with the standardization. You are in the IPC, and which basically defines the standard for the printed board assembly.
yes.
But how do you see, like, on one hand we follow the standards, but on the other hand, do we limit our competitive advantage if we purely follow all the standards?
I think actually there are different standards. Many of these standards are a bit, we can say, old. Actually, our newest products, if we look at the standards, say you should have a certain distance or between, or you can have a certain tools and process for do some kind of rework. And in many cases, and we look at our finest pitches and the most advanced products, it doesn't really fit, because those standards are a little conservative actually. And when I read them, in many cases I can understand that our products are quite advanced actually. So we normally have exemption document at Ericsson. So I can say we can't really, if we follow them too strictly, we will limit our development actually. And often, the rules, if we follow those IPC rules for dry components or whatever it is, and we bake them 96 hours, or they will be really, really, really dry. So it's good to follow if you can. But if we say this is impossible to follow, we need to do our own tests and our own investigations. And in many cases, we need to have some nuances or adjust those rules. Another thing is, when we complain about those international standards, I think that it's a little bit better maybe to join the committees and try to change, influence and develop them instead of just complaining. So I think that is something. I'm in just one standard committee, but maybe I should be in maybe one more, but I think we could be more active because we're quite a big company, I think so. And
Yep.
it's not easy actually in those, but
Well, definitely it might be really good for the this French baguette holder to have standardization, and maybe there could be kind of international committee on the baguettes, which will be specifying the size and all this. So then you can mass produce the same size of the baguettes.
yeah, one good thing with actually in France, they have quite strict, I would say, well, it's not maybe rules, but they are quite strict how this kind of baguette should look, the size and so on. It's
So if it's spread all around the globe, you can expect same size of the baguettes according to same standard.
yeah, it's quite at least in France they are really quite strict.
Usually this is how people go to shops and they say, "Oh, I want the baguettes like it's in France."
Yes.
But coming back to the topic of SMT, if we speak about stencil printing, it's been there for decades, and how do you see the next decade? Will it stay the same, or will have some kind of disruption in how material is applied?
I know that in many cases we are at the real limits, especially when we have the very big boards and so on that shrink, and there are a lot of things happening on the warp pitch, and for very fine pitch components, they are really sensitive. But I've seen over my years how the stencil have really developed, and those especially laser cut equipment that looked awful in the beginning now are really clean surfaces. And I know that we at Ericsson just have a few. Many times we don't use this nano coating or coating, and there are different variants. And I made some tests that show that these are really not always. It's but if it's well done, you can really, it's very really advantageous. But I think those we try to have this jet printing that we have in this factory here, and we work together with so develop the machines, and actually Ericsson has been a part of the basic development of jet printing, and we actually here believe that this equipment had limits that when we work together with the machine vendor and the machine, those who designed the machine, they told us we learned that if you treat the machine well and have the right software and the right kind of nozzles and so on, you can have much more precise dispensing. But anyway, the printing is it's good. There are different methods, but I know the solar paste had developed really a lot, and the stencil, and also the stencil materials. And but I agree with you that now we have many products. We have step up, step down.
But let's say if you look into additive manufacturing, to the 3D printing, do you see some disruption or some kind of big advancement coming from that side?
I am in my group. We have some that work 100% with the 3D additive manufacturing. I'm not one of them, but what I notice is that the speed how they develop from one generation to next is quite impressive, and also I notice that many things that we talked about, like embedded components and so on, and if you look into the substrate technology that actually is made in Japan or Taiwan or South Korea. Many of the things that we have talked about for 15 years, it's already implemented. So I think in some areas this 3D additive, it's really interesting. And I think also when they talk about many different shapes of the electronics, that is, especially if you have electronics like we already have in anywhere nearly, it could be in many cases an advantage. And the development is really fast. And
what do you think about the new thermal interface materials, and for example this liquid metal applied on the die on the leadless chips?
Yeah, the liquid, if we talk about those, are liquid at room temperature, like gallium alloys. We did some tests and got, if you keep them that they don't solidify, so freeze, and keep them away from as much as you can from oxygen, and really good sealing around, so you don't, and also have a quite advanced way of applying this material, and also use the right materials in the lid, and because we now test, and of course they react with everything. And when they start to freeze and to oxidize, they behave very differently afterwards. So I think so far for our products, it's not stable enough. But if you have a PlayStation at home and always set like the room temperatures and so on, and I know it's used. But now we try some other solid metals with a little higher melting temperature, and it's a bit promising anyway, I can say. But it's a lot we have to learn, especially of the thermal reliability when we see cracks and...
Probably it's still going to develop further, and maybe this challenge that you mentioned, the risk with them will get less. But I would like to ask now more about, you mentioned about music as a hobby.
Yes.
Do you play, or?
No, I play classical guitar, and actually I tried to get into the music academy in Sweden, but they told me correctly I was not good enough. So then actually engineering was like a second choice. And actually the first year when I studied at the Institute of Technology, I took private lessons for guitar as well. So, but then I understood that I needed to really improve very, very much, and to study that university, I couldn't do the two things at the same time. And I wasn't, I think I would not really survive to play concerts. So I think it was really good that I became engineer instead. But it's a funny hobby, I think. And my daughter plays really good, and so it's I have good friends that I can play with and have just for fun.
But how do you think, does it impact your performance at work?
In some way, actually, because for a while I played like Italian Baroque music with a group that I was the only one who was not a professional musician. And we had some, I learned a little bit how to perform in one way, and to prepare, and sometimes, maybe not now, but when I have a presentation, I really think about what is the message, how should I explain this in a clear and logic way, and how should I really get the people interested in this. And it's sometimes it's like sometimes you perform at work when I present a result from project. So And also when I write, I try to have some kind of rhythm in them when I write, and so I mix long and short sentences, and it should be a certain, yeah, of course, a certain level, but it should be nice to read to listen to. So I think I learned, I have some use of that experience in a way.
And also, I would like to ask, but do you do some sport? Or
When I was young, I was a swimmer, not really good, but and then I became a swim teacher and for competition swimming. And for a while, I did some gymnastics and so on just to keep me in shape. But now unfortunately, and I would like to continue with that, but I have a little bad period right now. But I actually walk to and back and forward to work. Even though that is not really a sport, you can say that. But I understand. And sometimes when I go on this, when I have some deadlines, I sit like 10 hours to write a report and maybe take the flight to France and then to USA and so on. I understand this is not a healthy way of living. So that's something I think I should improve in my life. And I remember a little bit when I was young and run for the bus and so on, it was no problem. But now it's really a problem. But of course, I'm getting old as well, but that's something I should improve anyway. I'm aware of that. And also when I was young, I really liked sport. Even in school, when I was in elementary school and so on, we were some boys who actually, each test we had like a competition. And on the recess, we played football and so on. And I liked to compete all the time. And now I don't care so much for that. Actually, the competition is not important at all, actually. But it's important to, be in good shape. That's...
But now you are applying for the leadership position in our company. So basically leading the engineering team, working on printed board assembly. But imagine that it's you who is hiring in your company, you own the company, and you are hiring the manager for this department, printed board assembly department. In this case, what qualities you will look for in that person whom you're hiring?
Yeah, I think he should be quite open. That's okay. Some certain, of course, basic, quite knowledge, and could go a bit deep into the theories and material science and so on, and reliability. That's and how the production equipment and the processes works. That's of course some basics. But otherwise, I think it's so complex. So you can spend the whole life in just a small. When I go to these like solar paste vendors, and they show me, here is the department we develop fluxes. We have 20 people here, and nearly everyone has a PhD in chemistry, and they spend the whole life on one part of our solar paste that also have these metal spheres. And that is just one part. Then we have the process, the stencils, pick and place, and all the materials in the PCB and all. So you have to you have to be aware of this, that it's in limits. You can give, complexity actually. So you need to be quite humble and listen to others, and actually together with other experts, try to find solutions, and never mind who came up with the idea and so on. We need to cooperate. It's really, when everything works well, you can think this, now I know this process, now I know this. But then when you start to get some problems and try to dig deep into, then you understand you can spend your several lifetimes in this when you go down into the material. And so I think that's a good way to at least to have this, to understand this, and also be quite humble about what you know, and take help. If we help each other, we can succeed.
You also mentioned about those people doing the PhDs. Have you thought for yourself to go to get degree in PhD?
My mother asked why, because I work so in this consortium, everyone has a PhD there. So it's actually, when I finished university, I just wanted to start to work because I thought now it's enough after, but I have not really found. If I start over, maybe I should have liked to get, because quite often together with this in this consortium and so on, and we have even a few PhD materials specialists here in Kista, and I like to work with them and discuss with them and learn with them, and I really high respect for their knowledge. And sometimes, of course, I think so maybe I should have done their work as well, because it's. And sometimes also when we have a problem, I'm happy I know such many very, very skilled engineers and scientists and research people, because quite often I understand that I can go to a certain level in this area, but it's good I know a few people that can go much, much deeper and much, much longer. So that's but of course, then sometimes I would like to have had the time to get deeper into some technologies, because now I work with the whole PCBA manufacturing process. It could be nearly anything. And then, so now it's very difficult to get very, very deep into the materials and processes. But after 30 years or 34 years, if you work every day, you learn something. And actually, when you work with these new technologies and new packages and new materials that I work with, it's actually nearly every day I learn something. So it's.
Have you had the cases when you did a lot of work when someone was taking credit for your work?
No, well, it's a long time ago, maybe, when I started at Ericsson in Norrköping. There were actually that factory has been closed down. It was partly a good factory, but it was actually it was not actually that way. But it was often, if someone came with a good idea, some other want to press it down. Don't think that you are better than anyone else. And even so, that was a little tough environment actually, and many were afraid if they had if you had an idea and it finally didn't work out well, everyone was a little afraid. So they didn't really told even if they had a good idea, they were a bit afraid. So that was my first period at Ericsson, and then it was really. And I was a process engineer, so my job was actually to see could we improve. And I was, first of all, new at that position, but it's also when you test something that is new, it's quite often quite often it doesn't improve. And then you learn, okay, this was not a good idea, but maybe the knowledge we get, we can use, and maybe with some other ideas, maybe in the end we get something better. And that was really a little tough, because if I came up, or anyone came up with an idea that didn't work, then then you were told that was bad. And that was actually really bad for that whole factory, that way of thinking, actually. That's
But nowadays it's way different.
yeah, but I can see like this sometimes. I can see that sometimes, especially if my colleagues, more of my colleagues than me, but sometimes if I do work or take some photos, and some managers maybe have a presentation, they don't write photo Lars Bruno and so on. Often there is not me, that maybe it's some of my colleagues. And I think that is so easy just to say, or this work made by this person, and that another person took these photos, and the idea was you just mention who did it and then you present it. So for me, it's mostly quite small things, but I think, and I try to learn from this, because when I see actually at this conference in San Diego, I saw one photo from a previous study that me and my colleagues had done, and it didn't say anything what they took that photo from, and I think that's.
They didn't mention it.
No, they didn't mention it. And they could. The best thing is, of course, to look who took this photo, which study does it come from, and then send a mail. Could I use this photo or this text that you wrote in my report, if I mention that I took it from you and you're in the reference list? And then we should say yes, of course. But if they just take it, I see that sometimes I see it, and I don't get so angry, but I think it's really. I more think that they made this mistake, probably by purpose, maybe, but I think I will not make that mistake, actually, because that's a little also my philosophy. That is, if someone did something good and I'm the one, maybe quite often I'm the project manager and I present this or write the report, then it's really, I should, and I'm happy to promote those who did the work. And actually, if someone came up with an idea or someone had a really great photo, of course it should be a photo by this person, so everyone can. So, yeah, that's. I think it's important.
And it's actually quite one of the topics was this ChatGPT, that you ask some information, it provides you some information, but not with reference. But of course, if you explicitly ask to give reference, then it starts giving some like sources from where information was taken.
I think especially if you present, but actually sometimes we have internal documents and we write some recommendations, and maybe historically sometimes we don't even note, because we don't present it outside and so on. But actually a few years after, if we question why do we do like this, and we haven't written really the source or what kind of test did we do, and that is really, just because it was obvious 5 years ago, 5 years later we have forgotten about the test. So it's really not just to be polite or promote someone who did a good job. It's also when you come back to this and say, yeah, we got this conclusion because we had this test, it helps as well. So it's
Yep. And now coming to the final question in our job interview, what is your salary expectation?
exactly. Yeah, I know. $10,000 a month. That's one bad thing with me, maybe, that in many ways I don't say so much in the salary discussions and so on. And also that is maybe small things, but when I test new materials, sometimes they ask me, this good material, what is the price? And I think I tested it in 25 different ways, but I never asked about the price. And I think that is really important, of course.
It's probably, in other words, the business acumen.
Yeah. Then I learned also, of course, if we should buy something from Ericsson, they are specialists and those who negotiate, and maybe that's an area I shouldn't say and do too much in that area, actually. But of course, when I apply for a job, I actually had friends when they who left Ericsson, and then it come to another company, and they said, what's your salary expectation? And he said exactly the salary he had before. And they said, yes, immediately. And then he thought, maybe I should have said increase a little bit. So it's...
Well, probably it's in normal way. It's should be a normal discussion without any fear. So if it's too high, then the hiring side will say it's too high, and then can be adjusted.
Yeah, it's normally, and of course, in real world, we can say this. Then I should, if I apply for a job, I should make some research. What is a normal salary for this kind of work in this, in this kind of company, in this country, and so on.
What I personally liked in several interviews that I had is that if you say it's too high, then it doesn't mean that you are not taken. It's just that it will be dialogue. You will be replied, it's too high, this is the maximum we can offer, or this is the range we can offer. And then it brings to still discussion. So if person is afraid to ask a high salary, then should not be afraid, because it doesn't mean straight away that the person will not get the job. It will just turn discussion into different salary range.
And actually, once when I changed from one factory in Norrköping to Katrineholm, first I was helping. They need some help, so I went to this other factory, and then they said, "Yeah, we would like to hire you here." And then they gave me some suggestion of salary, and then I said it was not a real argument, but I said I live in the next town and I have to take the train or the car every day. So if I take this, the salary you tell me, then then I will lose in the end. So that I don't accept that. It's not a really good argument. But then I really wanted that job, so I thought the next come back tomorrow, and I thought also, even if they don't increase the salary, then I take this job anyway, because I felt that was much more interesting to work there. But actually, they had during that day they increased my salary a few thousand kronor, and I thought it was really good. I tried to negotiate anyway. So of course, that's important. You have a possibility when you change job that something could happen with your salary. So
you basically felt better because you exercised your right to not just being kind of oppressed in that sense to ask, but in some sense self-realize yourself.
And also understood that they really, maybe I also understood after a while that it was kind of negotiation. There were some negotiation possible, so that they thought, we tell him this salary, but we could put a little higher. and so they expected some kind of negotiation. So then it's really not so clever to accept the first thing they say. And also because they increased, they also show that they really would like me to take that position or that job. So that's nice to feel that as well. That they.
All right.
Yeah.
But with this, we conclude our job interview.
Yes, sure.
And now we change our hats and back to kind of real life. And I'd like to ask now your feedback. How did you feel? How did it go?
Yeah. Sometimes I actually forgot that it was a job interview. But also it was like 30 years ago that I went to a job interview. So maybe, no, I think it's quite good general discussion. I think what is a little about my philosophy when I work, and that.
But if you again, the same scenario that I mentioned, that you're hiring, you're the owner of the company, or you're the head of department. If you imagine that you need to hire some leader,
and then you get a person like me, or you know.
But I mean, will you be doing it in the same way, asking similar questions that I ask you?
I think now it was not so. What I should, if it would be a real job, I should, of course, I should have asked more. What is kind of company? How is it organized? How is who is, my manager? What is more precisely expected from me, and maybe go deeper into the technology for this product. Because when you asked about some materials or product or screen printing and so on, I had the job I work now in my head, not so it so, and that's maybe the way I could. That's it's in real job interview. I think we should go deeper into the real product and the real company and so on. Then. And if I was, but that was my responsibility really, to ask those questions about the company and what kind of, you had a product, the electronics, what are you supposed to steer in this, and what to control, and what kind of basic technologies do you have in mind, or anyway, how far I come with your design. I didn't ask those obvious questions to you. But otherwise, if it was from your part, I think maybe it's what's quite to give, get an idea how I think and who I am. I think it was quite. I think you succeeded. To a little open me up somehow. Anyway, so I think that what's I think good from your side.
All right, and now the question I would like to ask is: there will be many different people watching and listening us. Well, currently watching and listening us, but one of those people, or like profile of the person, is the engineer, aspiring engineer who just starting a career. So like you can imagine yourself 5 years ago, and
25 years ago.
Well, I counted
no, it's that's
but so to that engineer who is just starting career, just maybe freshly graduated from university, what advice will you give?
What a few things I learned actually. Right, we talked about this Universal Area Consortium. That means I've been like 50, 60 times to New York, and I learned like professors, and actually in this area they have one Nobel Prize in the same research area and so on. And they really, actually, when they asked me if I could coordinate this work and take this project, it was nearly, it was 25 years ago. And I nearly said no, actually. And I think if you believe, even if it's complicated and it would have been a bit sad if I said no and didn't take that opportunity that I learned enormous from, and also got a lot of help. When I got stuck, then I have some really super good experts that I know I can ask. And so I think that is, I never really regretted. There are a few others. When I became project manager in another consortium, I also hesitated because I was not the expert in that area, and I never been project manager in this consortium at all. But then I learned very much, and that's the reason why I'm now in this IPC committee, and it worked well. So I think you regret more if you say no to because just if it's not if you feel this is not something I should work with, or this is way too complicated, I'm not major for this right now, then maybe you should not say yes. But if you feel this is something I could do if I make an effort and if I take help, and also don't be afraid to ask for help if you need this. I don't feel secure here. It's better to ask help quite early, and you will probably get help. And so have some courage to, and also I think to communicate what you learn and so on. If you give something, often you get double as much back. And sometimes when I have problems and ask someone, I thought he will, I don't know, but I'm sometimes surprised how much help I'm getting back. Maybe because I have helped them someday or sometime. So it's take the chances, possibilities when you get them. It's with some courage. That's I'm really happy that I done some in a few times, and also I changed factory when I. So this is, I feel better here. You can feel also. Here it's a good, everyone helps each other, and it's a good, I feel well here. Then, take the chance to move to some place where you like to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Lars Bruno in the episode of Leaders and Engineers. Thank you for watching and listening us.